In this Gospel reading today, we come across one of the great miracles that our Lord performed amongst many thousands of people. It says here there were about 5,000 men apart from women and children, so you could probably double or triple that amount. That's an enormous number of people to come in those days to listen to the Lord talk, especially in those situations where there was no microphones or anything. Not that the Lord needed that, because miraculously he could have made it so everybody heard him, no matter how far away it might have been from him. In any case, they were so raptured in his talk and the wisdom that came out of his mouth that they forgot to eat. And they forgot to bring anything with them, picnic basket or something like that. The disciples were concerned about this and said to the Lord, chase them away so they can go and buy something. And he said, no, you don't need to do that. You give them to eat. What does that mean? You give them to eat. When we take that sentence into the context of our times, the time after Pentecost, that is what I keep telling you about almost every week. Missionary work. You give them to eat. These people were so wrapped in what they heard, in the speeches that were coming out of the Lord, that they forgot about eating, because that was filling them up. That was actually filling them up. And any one of you who gets into that situation yourself, where you read something divine and holy from the likes of the saints, from some theology book, from the Gospels, or anything like this, can certainly enter in that situation. We get so wrapped in it, we just keep reading and reading. You don't worry about eating, because your food is this one that God gives you. That food that fills you up spiritually and takes away from you that physical necessity for wanting to eat. In fact, some people have actually used that little sentence as a sort of a jingle when they go out into missionary work. Give ye then to eat. Give ye then to eat. Not food, not physical food, but all those wonderful things that the Lord has taught us. And indeed, the disciples, of course, this was a time before they still did not understand the greatness of whom they were with. They completely concentrated on these physical things, the food and whatever. And the Lord, in condescension to their weakness, said, well, what have you got there? And they said, well, 5 loaves and a couple of fish. So he took that, he blessed it, broke it, gave it to the disciples, and they gave it to the people. Let's say there were 10 or 15,000 of them. What is it? 5 loaves and 2 fish. He fed all them. On top of that, they collected 12 baskets full, left over. You see? And even after that, they still didn't know what the Lord was on about when he said, give them to eat. It was only after his resurrection, after the time he spent with them and taught them and to understand things not just physically but spiritually, that they actually got the point. Such a wonderful thing, such a short little reading from the Gospel, yet full of so many wise instructions for us and understandings. On this particular day, we are commemorating the holy prophet Elias, truly a wondrous person from the Old Testament. I won't say too much about him, because there's quite a lot of writings about him in the Old Testament. But I know that traditionally, on this particular day, Prophet Elias commands the weather, and often that comes across with all sorts of horrendous storms and whatever. If it does, and it has before, and we've seen that actually happen, you'll know why. You'll know why, because of that. That's basically what I wanted to say to you today. The other thing is that on Tuesday, we are commemorating one of the women missionaries, St. Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene. You could say that she was like the female version of Apostle Peter, very zealous, shoots off the cuff, ready to jump into everything without thinking too much about it, ready to do whatever the Lord asks her. impulsive, very impulsive. That's not a disadvantage, by the way. It just needs to be directed in some sort of good way, and it becomes quite an asset that a person has. And as you know, that she was one of the first to come to the empty tomb at Christ's resurrection. She came and saw the tomb empty and became distressed, didn't know what happened. She saw this person, thought it was the gardener, went and asked him, where have you put the master? He turned around, looked at her, called her name, and she recognised it was the Lord, tried to jump on him, and hug him and whatever. He said, hang on a moment, you don't really understand what's going on here yet. Go and tell my disciples to come and meet me at such and such a situation. The Gospels talk about several groups of women coming to that tomb. And people like Protestants, for example, how they decipher the Bible with such pedantic ways, take all these different comings and goings, and they say, look, this is all contradictory. One gospel says this, another one says that, another one says this. What's going on? Well, they were all happening. There were several groups of women and some individuals, and they all came at different times to the tomb and went away at different times from the tomb. Every single one of them actually occurred. And the Gospels, the three Gospels, talk about this as these groups of women came. And they actually give names in many cases of who they were. And that's one of these sort of things also where we see in the Bible often where Christ does something or somebody has interaction with him, and then in another gospel there's something similar and people associate that it's the same thing, but it's not. It's a different episode. It's a different thing that's happening. And therefore there's no contradiction at all about that. The saints, the holy people that have written commentary about this, make that quite clear, that all those sort of things that happened were happening at different times by different people who may have seemed the same, but not quite. So Mary Magdalene, by Catholics and Protestants, is considered to be an ex-harlot, which she was not. She was not. The prophecies from the Old Testament were quite clear in many, many ways that a virgin will conceive and bring forth the Messiah. And therefore the demonic realm was very suspicious of this and was looking out for righteous virgins to try and bring them down somehow, destroy them. Because the last thing they wanted was for a Messiah to be born. And they saw her as a candidate for that, and therefore very vehemently attacked her. Very vehemently. Somehow she managed to survive that, only just, and then when Christ came, he drove those demonic hordes from attacking her. It was not because she was a harlot at all, but a very righteous person. The same thing would have happened to the Mother of God had she not been taken under the care of Elder Joseph through a betrothal. By having that done, she was sort of hidden away, so that the incarnation could go through quietly without anybody knowing about it and what was happening. That's the sort of historical context in which we find ourselves. God help us with this, and I hope that you understand these sorts of things. And by the way, see, Mary Magdalene, because of that zeal and impetuousness that she had no problems about going even to Caesar, the great emperor of Rome or something, and telling him about the resurrection, apparently presenting him with an Easter egg, Paschal egg. If you go to the convent monastery in Jerusalem dedicated to St. Mary Magdalene, beautiful, lovely domes and whatever, there's a massive mural of her presenting this egg to Caesar. It's huge. It's, 3 or 4 meters high, and about the same width, if you've ever been there. It's a Russian convent, and it was established there as a missionary centre back in the 19th century, maybe even earlier. God help us with this and preserve us in this world. Just want to say something. Turn it off.